All right. Welcome everybody to Utahns Against Hunger's online forum titled Ramen Noodles, Cups, and Cereal, Dispelling Myths of College Student Hunger. My name is Miguel Chamorro-Leon. I am the Food Access and Communication Coordinator for Utahns Against Hunger and your co-host tonight. Today's discussion is the first of 4 online forums we hope to put on this year addressing hunger, with the hopes we can bring awareness to the many faces of hunger across Utah. The issue today will be college student hunger, and we have 4 panelists who are bringing years of experience and insight into college student hunger joining us tonight. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce them. Joining us tonight is the co-lead at the University of Utah Basic Needs Collective, Sarah Elizabeth Garza-Levitt. Sarah Elizabeth is a strategic and innovative leader with diversified experience in healthcare. Informed by her personal experience as a single working parent, taking many years to attain her higher education, Sarah Elizabeth has joined efforts to support student success as a founding member of the University of Utah's Basic Needs Collective. Next up is President and CEO of Davis Technical College, Darren Brush. Darren Brush is President and CEO of Davis Technical College, a role he has served in since 2019. Before his current role, he served as Vice President of External Engagement and Economic Development at Davis Technical College, during which time he oversaw employer partnerships, career placement services, and small business development efforts at the college. Previously, he was Executive Director at the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, CEO at Community Development Corporation of Utah, and Deputy Director at the Utah Department of Workforce Services. Also joining us tonight is Weber Care's Pantry Specialist, Jordan Wheeler. Jordan Wheeler is attending Weber State University, majoring in criminal justice with an emphasis in crime scene investigation and minoring in musical performance. He is the Weber Care's Pantry Specialist for the food pantry and is for the food pantry that is on Weber campus. He has been working in food pantries for 2 years and has loved every minute of it. And last but not least, joining us as co-host of our forum tonight is Utahns Against Hunger's very own food security advocate, Alex Cragan. Alex has been involved in issue advocacy and community action for over a decade. His involvement ranges from healthcare to public transit advocacy. He graduated from the University of Utah with a degree in political science in 2011. Alex has worked in federal and state advocacy for the Healthcare Center program, served as Salt Lake City's Board of Trustee for UTA, and served as the executive director for the Utah Democratic Party. Just want to say welcome to everybody on the panel. Before we get started, I just want to go over tonight's schedule. I will be handing hosting duties over to Alex in just a moment. He will then direct the panel in answering 5 questions tonight. While that may seem like just a few questions, with 4 panelists, the time will fly by, I guarantee it. We ask that you try and keep answers to around 2 minutes. Of course, if you're on a roll, don't let us stop you. And feel free to chime in wherever you see best. This is an open style discussion, which we hope to get some great insight into the topic tonight. Lastly, the last 15 to 20 minutes of the discussion will be left open for audience questions. If you're tuning in from home over Facebook Live, feel free to drop in any questions you may have in the Facebook Live comment section or direct message us. We will be collecting those questions and using some of them on the second half of this forum. Now over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Miguel. So the first question we have tonight is, what is sort of the myth of around the notion of the broke college student? And then what is your experience, whether as a student yourself or in your current position with student food insecurity? And I'll leave that to whoever wants to open up first. Fine, then I will select one. I would love to hear from Sarah Elizabeth then first.
Trying to be gracious and offer up space. So yeah, I can kick us off. Thanks, Alex. I think what I hear most is the starving student narrative, right? The title of this panel today is one that is a pervasive myth, actually, that college student poverty that results in basic needs insecurities such as food insecurity, hunger, homelessness, housing insecurity. For me, that there's an element of that that is acceptable in this myth. this myth perpetuates the notion that students are in college and therefore need to struggle. And it's often perpetuated by those that had experiences with that, or that have heard of experiences and think that there's this element of okayness to students struggling while they're working really hard to attain their higher education. And for me, that's really problematic. Actually, the notion that any student is hungry is a problem. The fact that students are on our campus today that are struggling with hunger is actually not okay. And here we have several institutions represented, and we have students in these institutions that are experiencing financial insecurity, hunger, housing insecurity, a lot of the challenges that have been exacerbated by the lingering COVID pandemic, by a lot of the social political challenges that we're experiencing right now with inflation. I mean, I just filled up my car at the gas station today and I was like, ouch, right? And that's something that currently I have the ability to absorb. I have ability financially, blissfully to absorb those costs. But when I was a student at Salt Lake Community College, working really hard to attain my Associate of Science degree, there was a time in my life where that would have been prohibitive. My gas tank would not have been full, and my physical gas tank was under full as well. I was a single teenage parent, and I earned my GED when I was 16 years old. And I had a 1-year-old, and in 1994, I enrolled in Salt Lake Community College, and I'm an alumni. It took me 23 years to earn my Associate of Science degree. A lot of that was around poverty, working 2-3 jobs, trying to earn my college degree, and not knowing the resources that were available to me, and having a lot of shame and stigma that I experienced and felt around that, and a lack of sense of belonging. So I think when we talk about these myths and these ways in which we kind of brush off college student hunger and college student poverty, that it actually causes harm. They're harmful. I'll leave it at that. I know we have Darren and Jordan that might have other thoughts. So.
Thank you, Sarah. I can go next. Something that, like, going along the same lines, a myth that I feel that happens within universities and within students, like, I feel like is, at least for me, a lot of people are like, oh, you're going to go to college and you're going to eat ramen noodles. They build up this stigma before you even get to college that, oh, you're not going to have enough money to get your food. And so by the time you get there, then it feels like, oh, I don't have enough money, so I can't go buy this, or I can't use this resource. I can't have food. I can only eat ramen noodles. So I think that's something that needs to be changed, is we can't tell students or children before they go to college that, oh, you're not gonna be able to get food. Like, you're not gonna have enough money to get food. Instead being like, okay, how can we save money to help you to get that food? What resources is there before you go up to campus that you can get that food? And so for me, in like a student perspective, I've seen that a lot. Is there's a lot of students that have come to campus and are like, I'm going to be food insecure. They already say it like right as they get there, because their parents have told them, oh, you're going to eat ramen noodles for the rest of. And so I think it's important to let like students know that just because you're going to college doesn't mean you have to be food insecure.
Darren?
Thank you. I'm so glad Sarah and Jordan went first. Those are such thoughtful and clear responses. I don't know that I could add anything to them. I would probably focus on a couple of additional myths that I've thought about since the food security survey came out. And before I do that, I want to thank you, Alex, Miguel, everyone at Utahns Against Hunger, the Center for Hope, Weber State University, United Way. This food security survey of higher education I know that it's the State Board of Higher Education has taken it very seriously, and I can speak to Davis Tech, where been a tremendous tool in informing our response, that I'll talk about a little bit later. So I couldn't be more grateful. And I cringed when Miguel read my bio. I hate hearing that. But the one thing that he missed that I'm perhaps most proud of for this panel is that I've had an association with Utahns Against Hunger for about 20 years. And I prize that association. And I've learned more about food security from Gina Cornea, the executive director, than she's probably forgotten more than she ever taught me. And I just want to shout out to her and tell her how much we appreciate and love her. She's beating cancer right now, and we're looking forward to having her back in the fight soon. So that said, I thought of a couple of additional myths. One is that student food insecurity somehow resolves itself organically somewhere else other than our campuses, right? And as I thought about the survey, and anybody that's been through the report, you'll see an analysis on page 28 that compares our technical colleges to our degree granting institutions, and our technical colleges have a higher rate of food insecurity among our student bodies. And that, while that's not surprising, it's deeply troubling. And one of the things I appreciated about the survey or about the report was that we looked at other coping mechanisms. We asked students, what are some of those coping mechanisms? And technical college students were much more likely to rely on food pantries than degree granting institution students. They relied 2 or 3 times more heavily on SNAP or food stamps. And they relied almost twice as much on assistance from religious organizations. And yet, despite that, our students, I said that more than 25% of them who were food insecure still went hungry. And that's what's troubling. So while we think that it may organically, spontaneously resolve itself outside of our campuses, it doesn't. And that's why we have to play a role. Number 2 is that food security is a disassociated symptom of poverty. It's independent of transportation, or it's independent of housing, or it's independent of mental health or physical health or violence or childcare needs. We know better, right? And that's why we have to address them holistically for our students. And the other myth that I thought of was that there'll always be a stigma associated with food insecurity. We don't believe that anymore. There doesn't have to be a stigma associated with it. And if we get the chance, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, and thank you. You actually walked right into the next question, which is how do we, when looking at ways to combat stigma, sharing experiences oftentimes comes up as one of the best ways to sort of normalize the notion of seeking help, seeking assistance. So the question would be, how do we get students to share their experience with hunger and take action to break stigma and public perception? And then the second part of that is like, how is your institution address the issue of stigma and dismantling the popular myth of the broke college student? And I'll start actually with Jordan this one.
I actually have to move real quick. So if someone else would like to start.
Okay, yeah, no, Darren, do you want to chime in?
Sure, I'd be pleased to. So I think there are a number of strategies around this. One of the things we've done at Davis Tech is it doesn't help to keep it in a dark corner. It doesn't help to not address it. It doesn't help to make services available someplace out of sight. That just fuels the stigma, right? So what we have done, and I can't claim that we have a lot of history doing this. We only recently opened our student resource center and our food pantry within our resource center, and we had done some things before that. We have a cafe on campus, and we would provide meals to our students if we were aware that they had if they were food insecure. Or we have great partners like the Bountiful Food Pantry or our CAP agency, Open Doors, that provided resources, but frankly, we didn't have a food pantry on our campus until just the beginning of this year. And that was informed by this survey. And so we took deliberate steps, and we couldn't have done it without our foundation. We have an incredibly compassionate and powerful foundation board led by one of the great do-gooders, Marcy Valdez, our foundation director. And they let out and they said, we're going to do this. We're going to raise the money for it. We're going to take this seriously. And we're going to put it in the middle of campus. We found, we're at technical colleges, space is a premium, but we decided we're going to take the most precious real estate we have right at the crossroads of campus. We're going to put it there. We're going to light it well. We're going to create excitement about it. We're going to have a grand opening. We're going to invite people in all the time. We're going to make it so visible that coming and going there is just part of the course of the college experience, and people feel welcome. And I think that we're starting to see the fruits of that. We have our student resource center. We're way behind Weber State, where Jordan goes, and far, far behind Sarah and the University of Utah. We wanted a good resource and referral center. We rely on 2 social work interns from Weber State who do great work for us in terms of resource and referral. So we're so grateful to Weber State. And then our food pantry is a no-knock, no-lock food pantry where students can come in and come and go. That helps eliminating the stigma. We ask them to give us some information. It's voluntary only for our own improvement processes to collect data. It's not necessary. And so that, just putting it in the light of day and celebrating it. And I'll just add to that. I asked, I sort of anticipated this question, and I asked our folks if they wouldn't talk with some students and ask if I could query them about the stigma they may or may not feel. And they validated. I talked with a couple of students last week that have been using the food pantry on a regular basis the last few months, and they agreed with that. They said, we don't feel uncomfortable. We feel like we're welcome. It's here. We tell all the other students we can think of about it. And that to me was an indication that we're headed in the right direction.
No, thank you. Jordan, you look like you found a better spot. Do you want to chime into the question again?
Yes. Thank you, Darren. I really appreciate your response. Going along kind of the same lines, something that we've been trying to do at Weber State, or at least I've been trying to do. So when a student comes into the pantry, it's kind of the same thing. They can come and go. But what I like, we're trying to create this positive environment is really what we're trying to create. And as we push out like our flyers and social media about the pantry, we're trying to make it as uplifting as we can. And the reason for that is we don't want students to feel like, oh, I'm going here, like this is a burden, like this, I'm being a burden, I shouldn't need to use a food pantry. We want to get rid of that stigma. It's anyone, it can use a food pantry. And we don't want, like, even if you were like the richest person in the college, we still want you to use it because it saves you money that you could use for an emergency or for your rent or something like that. And so I think being able to like just create a place where people can go. I've even had students just come in to talk to me. That's it. Not get food, not anything, just even just to talk. And I think that's the first step, is having somewhere where a student can go and be like, oh, hey, can I talk to you about something? Can I get these other resources? Can I use the pantry? Like something uplifting, because I know college can be like draining sometimes and there's so much going on. So that, for me, that's something we've been trying to build, is like build this environment where students can even go to just talk.
I love that. Now, Sarah, Elizabeth, I know that you guys have been doing a lot of work on this particular issue.
And it's an ongoing process. And I really commend Darren for the work that's going on at Davis Tech and Jordan for what's going on at Weber, because I think that the more people that we have really kind of talking about this and elevating the visibility of it, the greater resources we have together than we do individually. We share students, invariably we share students. So sharing resources and having this platform. So thank you, Alex, for that. One of the things that I want to think back to what you said is about people sharing their stories. I started sharing my story of struggling as a college student and what it took for me to persist. And there is a very definable timeline there for me in my college degree attainment. So as I shared, I earned my GED when I was 16. I enrolled in Salt Lake Community College. I took yoga and bowling my first semester because I was like terrified of going to school, and I was really worried about like the classes. So I was like, I took those 2 classes. And I remember during those times, during those really early times, being a single teenage working parent and trying to go to school and struggling, there was a lot of shame, and there was not a lot of talk about resources. And I was directly told by people that, I don't belong here, that, maybe this isn't the time to be pursuing an education. And some of that was sage advice, and some of it was hurtful advice at the same time. And for me, in that, I think there's also this notion that's another myth around, there are people that have it worse than you. So I'm not going to take the resources. I'm not going to go to the pantry. I'm not going to go apply for the scholarship because there's people that need it more than me. And I think that's like, I was doing okay. I had a safe house. I was working, and I was trying to chip away at a degree. And some of that I thought was, well, there's people that have it worse than me that may be in need. And so I think one of the things we're trying to undo also is this notion of deserving. Like I love what Jordan said. You don't have to perform your poverty. I'm not going to ask you intrusive questions. I'm not going to ask you, to do those sorts of things that can be hurtful, that can deepen stigma, deepen shame. And so that to me is really an important thing as well in this work, is recognizing that people don't need to deserve the resources, that we need to think through processes for not only mitigating long-term poverty, so higher uptake in SNAP and Medicaid enrollment and solutions that can help students throughout their academic career, but also those emergency aids along the way. I think that there's a lot we can do there. Like I started sharing my story of struggle, not because I think I'm unique or special in any way, actually quite the contrary. I think that part of sharing my story is saying like that we're human, we're in school, and that we're part of this community, and that I feel strongly that my story informs my desire to turn around and try to help others and make it easier for them. I don't want to turn around and make it harder because it was hard for me. I'm the opposite. I want to make it easy. I want to help. I want to see, because there is so much that we can do together. So when I think about how to dispel stigma and shame, some of it's internalized, some of it's internal beliefs, right? And what a student is coming in with and the life experiences they bring with them. Students don't get to leave their food insecurity at the classroom door. They don't get to leave their trauma at the door. They don't get to leave their inability to find reliable shelter at the door when they're going to the classroom. Another myth I think that there is, I'll add another one, is this notion that these students aren't succeeding. I think they are. They are succeeding. And sometimes the institution is not succeeding at meeting them where they're at. I, had semesters where I had top-notch grades, had semesters where I didn't have top-notch grades. And some of that was a mixed bag for me, but there are students that are doing really well and are committed to their education, and that they are persisting and they're insistent in their degree attainment. And I think that there's an obligation of an institution to meet that commitment.
And again, you guys are all informing like the next questions, which is when thinking about existing student basic needs services, what barriers to access do you see, and what barriers do students with with school-age children experience, or students that are like international students? How are those barriers different for different folks, and like what has been successful in trying to eliminate those barriers, and what also hasn't been successful in trying to eliminate those barriers? I will let's see, Sarah Elizabeth.
Yeah, one of the barriers that comes to mind for me is that college student poverty, or helping students experiencing hunger, homelessness, is a new thing. It is not a new thing. Students have been struggling for a long time. Like I said, back in the 90s, a different haircut back then, different hair color back then, but it's not a new thing. I think that there have been student support I know that there have been student support services, professionals, academic advisors on campus, certain faculty, staff people on different campuses and institutions, like one-on-one working with a student to try to help meet their needs while they're in school. For me, that's a wonderful thing. And I think institutionalizing basic needs and securities or programming aimed specifically at supporting students and reducing those basic needs and securities, so hunger, financial insecurity, and homelessness, that doesn't need to take away all of those wonderful professionals that a student has a relationship with, that may go to them and ask for their support or advice. I think institutionally, we want to retain those terrific support services. And what I see we want to do is we want to empower them with even more, so that when they do have a student, and also empower those that are on campus that may not feel that they're in the role to be the helpful referral person for a student that came to them and disclosed something. We need to, at minimum, be able to support them in knowing where to refer the student, where to get that student. I had a conversation just last week about that with a faculty member that reached out and like, where do I send this student? And it's like, yes, there's things that we can do. So I think more training on that, especially in an institution that's so large as ours at the University of Utah, that's a huge and powerful resource to leverage, but it's also a very big undertaking is to get messaging out to how to empower others in order to support students. I also feel really strongly that the literature is super clear. We know students that are experiencing hunger and like low food security struggle academically. There's a strong base in that. And also, if we go back to like secondary and primary education, there's decades of research in that. We know that hunger and low food security results in poor academic performance. And that's why we have a federal free lunch program. That's why we have free breakfast. I was one of those kiddos. I would eat my breakfast at school and my lunch at school, and sometimes that would be it. And so I think that there's a gap. A barrier for me is that gap. When students enroll in higher ed, it's suddenly like, well, if you're hungry, you'll make it do. Kind of like Jordan was saying, like that's just the norm, or what Darren was saying, that we need to overcome that notion that students may already have, the notion they need to struggle. So I think for me, I'm a big proponent of ways that we can provide food. We know how to feed people. We know how to do that. We need to make it, we need to systematize it. We need to invest in it institutionally in higher ed. That's my feeling.
Darren?
Well, I think there are two pieces of this for me. The weaving this, focusing our institution, led by our leadership, on this persistent focus on weaving a net of support is really a lot of the answer for us. And I think about, technical college. We have great technical colleges in Utah, 8 of them. Davis Tech's the largest, and so we're sort of at a scale where it's probably been a little easier for us than others, and it's been hard because we haven't always had the resources that we needed, let alone, first, we hadn't necessarily recognized everything we needed to do, let alone have the resources. And so we've had to be creative about weaving that net of support. And many of the things, Sarah said, are the things that we've attempted to do. We have great partners in our geographic footprint that come to the table and are willing to help. And that's been a great success for us. But we also, in that process, continue to recognize pieces we don't have that we do need. And I'm grateful to the Department of Workforce Services. We asked them, and they quickly mobilized and provided an employment counselor in our student services area who's there once a week, who can do a couple of things. One is they're there to talk about eligibility for programs that the Department of Workforce Services administers, including SNAP, Child Care Assistance, WIOA, TANF, all those programs. but it also gives us an opportunity to staff cases on students who are in their caseloads too, that we may not know also need some of the supports that the college can provide. And that's led us to now having a voc rehab counselor on staff 1 day a week, particularly to work with students with disabilities. So weaving that net, that's as Sarah said, that's a work in progress, right? We're always working on that. I said there are two parts of the answer for me. The other is you can't overcome the barriers to access unless you actually get in the door. And one of the things I've been focused on in my administration is I believe that technical education is some of the most approachable education that we can offer, shortest term, most affordable, with the highest return on investment for a lot of our underserved and underrepresented populations. That's all. That's what drives me in a lot of the work I do. And so at the college the last couple of years, we've looked at what are we doing that keeps people out? Once they're brave enough to come in, or they've overcome some of those barriers, or for whatever reason, they've walked in our door, how do we make it as easy for them to be successful once they're on our campus? And so one of the things we looked at is we revisited all the assessments for all of our programs. And we realized that we were assessing for things that had no correlation with how well a student could do in our programs. So we revisited all that. We threw a lot of it out. We started over because that was a false barrier to enrollment into our programs. And so we continue to not only weaving that net, but we continue to look at what barriers do we continue to create that may be, barriers to student success. Last point I'd make is the importance, as Sarah mentioned it, the importance of our faculty in the equation. So at technical colleges, and this is true, I believe, of every technical college in our system, our faculty have such a close relationship with the students because it's such a hands-on curriculum model that they become trusted advisors to those students. And students will then turn to them when they're confronting some of these symptoms or challenges or barriers. And so informing faculty, keeping them up to the minute on what resources exist, where to refer a student, what they can do to help that student, how they can put them most quickly in touch with the services they need. We have realized the criticality of that, how important that is for student success and student retention. So those are some of the thoughts.
Yeah, Jordan?
Thank you, Sarah and Darren. Those were both amazing thoughts. Some of the barriers that we are facing right now, I have a couple. The first one would probably be students, faculty, and staff not knowing the pantry exists. Because on an average weekly, I get about, 50 to 100 people that tell me, oh, I didn't even know this existed. And that is something we're trying to work on, is to let people know that we do exist. We're a resource on campus, which leads to our next barrier that we've had, is we have all the resources, but they're not all in one place. So right now we're working on building a basic needs network at Weber to be able to have everything in one place rather than spread out. Because I think that's a big thing for students, is they see, oh, we have all these resources, but I have to go here and I have to go here and here and here and here. And they don't have time because they're also going to classes and they're working. And so they're like, oh, I don't have time to go to the food pantry, so I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm not going to have this food. Or I don't have time to go to housing services. And so I think that's a really big barrier, is students, they know the resources are there, or they don't know the resources are there, and they find a couple, but they don't know about the other ones because they're all spread out. And so kind of like the University of Utah has come up with, is we're trying to build that basic needs network. So that way students and faculty and staff have one place to go rather than a million. And then I think our last barrier, which we are working on right now, is having, within the pantry, having foods that a variety of foods and also like cultural based foods, as well as food restrictions. So like for lactose intolerance, for gluten free. And we're coming up with a plan and having a section that's just for these foods, because I feel like students will come, or faculty and staff, and be like, oh, like this is the food that I eat, that I've eaten my whole life. Like whether they come from Germany or from Mexico or wherever they're coming from, and they don't like, they're not used to our food. And so being able to have somewhere where they can go and be like, oh, this is what I've eaten most of my life, like this is what I love. And also knowing that like they're supported. I think that's another big thing, is how we're trying to break that barrier. Is if we have what they want, their type of food, the cultural based food or the food restriction food, they can be like, oh, they do care about me, like they do want me to succeed. And so I think those are just a couple of barriers that we are facing.
No, thank you. And as you mentioned earlier, sort of the being able to keep an understanding of the pulse of what's going on campus requires input, requires that ongoing conversation with students and seeing what their priorities are and where their needs are, because that shifts and changes over the time. And which leads me to the question of is how does your organization gather that input and gather that buy-in from students? And I will, let's see here. We'll start with Darren.
Oh, thanks, Alex. I probably have the least exciting answer. I'm looking forward to hearing what Sarah and Jordan have to say. We started on this journey of our Student Resource Center, for instance, because we had a sense that we need to do something, but we hadn't asked the students specifically. And with the help of the Alan and Jeannie Hall Foundation, we surveyed all of our students and we asked them about the student success barriers. And that was the beginning of the Student Resource Center dialogue, because we could see that responses were all pointing toward what Jordan just described, a need on our campus that was a centralized place, a network of those services, either resource or referral. We have plans to continue that dialogue with students by both surveying them and formally holding focus groups is something we've talked about. I've done something recently that I think is probably even as helpful as any of that. I started taking my lunch each day down at our cafeteria, which is right in the center of our campus, directly across from our Student Resource Center, and sitting with the students, watching and listening to what they're doing, watching the comings and goings of our Student Resource Center. And already students have gotten comfortable enough with seeing me there that they'll talk to me about some of these things. In fact, I have come to realize I need to budget more time for my lunch down in the cafeteria because the feedback has been so valuable. So both a combination of those formal feedback mechanisms and informal feedback mechanisms is how we how we plan to continue to receive the feedback to improve.
Sarah Elizabeth.
I think a lot about this actually, and I think people on campus tend to know by now that I'm a huge person of there's probably not a committee meeting or a work group or a task force on this campus that shouldn't have a student on it. I come from healthcare. My first job was a custodian and file clerk in a physician's office. I'd go in the evening with my little infant son and his carrier and clean the office and do the filing. And in healthcare, there was a movement quite some time ago, about more than 20 years ago now, about really including patients in decision-making rooms in hospitals and clinics, because the decisions that are made directly affect the lives of patients. And so I've seen a lot of movement and a lot of progress in that. And I feel similarly in the academy and in colleges and technical institutes that if you're going to have a committee meeting, if you're going to have a work group meeting, it better have a student in there. Because if you're not meeting about something that somehow affects the student, then why are you meeting? Right. And I know it's radical. I tend to be a little radical in my views, a little unconventional. But I really feel strongly about that. And part of that is based in my healthcare and also my student experiences, decisions being made for me, at me, to me, and I am not a part of it. And I think that voice and choice is really, really where we need to be going if we want to see the transformation that we need to see in the academy, in the institutions that serve students. And people know me, I'm usually bringing students along. I'm like, I've got some students, bring them along. We're going to get this done. It's going to be great. And I can't do it alone. I don't have all the ideas. I'm limited in my experience. I'm limited in my perspectives. I'm limited in my views. And I need other people, to help inform the project, the process, the place, the space. And that's why the Basic Needs Collective at the University of Utah is such a powerful model of a team. It's not just me. There's amazing people all across campus that come together that are part of the collective because they care. By the way, it's not written into their little job description. It's not part of but it is and it isn't. It's like we're coming together because we care about students. To your point, Darren, we want to see them succeed. We want to retain them. We want to complete them. And we want to turn them into the workforce to be professionals and contributing in ways that really shift the world, right? Like that's our aim. And so I think the collective is an amazing model. So many great hearts and minds coming together to make sure that we're serving students in ways that matter.
Yeah, Jordan, how are you all sort of getting that input from students?
Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Sarah and Darren. I really love those. Being a student, I love feedback because I'm just one student out of, I don't even know how many Weber has, 10,000. Like, that's a lot. And so some things that I do, one is, so I have volunteers that come into the pantry to volunteer all the time, and I love it. And so I just kind of want to share a little experience I had. So there was one day that our pantry was kind of getting a little claustrophobic. So I wanted to like kind of rearrange it a little bit. So we had a little bit more room when people came in, and I had like 4 or 5 volunteers in there. And as we were doing it, I just kept asking, hey, what do you guys think? Like, should we put this there, here? And it was amazing how they were like, wait, you're asking us? Like, why are you asking us? And I'm like, because I don't know everything. Like, and having someone to rely on to be like, hey, how can we do this better? Or how can we do this better? Really helps. And like, in the end, our whole pantry ended up being more open because of it. And so being able to just talk to students, that is another thing. When I have volunteers running the pantry, I just like to go in at least one time during when we're open and talk to a student and be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how is the pantry doing? How can we help you? But also those non like informal ways of surveys. So every semester I always do send out a suggestion survey that says, how can we improve? What did you like? What didn't you like? And just feedback in general. It doesn't matter how you do it. If you do it informal, formal, just being willing to ask for like, how can I be better is the best thing you can do. So.
Oh, thank you. Earlier, Darren mentioned the Student Food Insecurity Survey. One thing I also want to point out, we do have on our website, we published, I believe early today, a policy brief on student food insecurity and some policy action options that are available for various levels of government. But to round back to the actual question, so looking at that student food insecurity survey, what stood out to you when reading it, and why did it stand out to you? Sarah Elizabeth.
Well, first of all, I think it was a really ambitious project to start with that statewide food security. And I will say, that I'm pretty close to literature and college student poverty because I'm a doctoral student in the College of Social Work, and this is my area of scholarly research. And I will say that a state has really not come together in this way. I think it's an amazing thing that the technical institutes, the colleges and the universities, that we came together and that we were able to pull something like this off is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I mean, there's some people in the UC that are doing cool stuff in that system, but to do a state, to include the community colleges, the technical institutes, and the universities is so great. And I see this as a baseline. I see this as a first step. For me, what stood out in the survey is kind of reinforcing the stories through data, reinforcing the stories that I hear from students. And I think that data can really inform meaningful change. It already has on our campus. Darren mentioned on their campus, and I'm sure at Weber. And I think moving forward, that this baseline data will be really helpful as we start to look at statewide solutions. So I know that the Utah State Board of Education is looking at investing in some type of basic needs and security survey that could be administered and that the institutions could be a part of. And we're actually forming a collaborative statewide group to look at ways that we can administer that survey, share results, and then collaborate on impactful programming. So for me, I think what stood out to me first and foremost is just that we came together and did something so lofty, so ambitious, and we pulled a bunch of people together. And that's what's been amazing in the time that I've been involved in this work, is like, whether it's the leadership at the University of Utah, whether it's collaborations with other institutions statewide, such as like Utah State that runs the Utah Food Corps Vista program that has embedded AmeriCorps Vistas at several institutions working to combat hunger. It's just amazing to see the people that are just ready to take up the charge and do it. And so for me, that's what stood out the most. I'm a social worker, so I'm a bit of an idealist anyway. So I love it.
Okay, no, I'm absolutely with you. When I got on the project, the idea of trying to get all 16 institutions together on one project and managing to do that was an extraordinary feat. And I had to thank my colleagues that were able to work together to make that possible. Jordan, any takeaways that you saw from the statewide survey or the Weber State survey, and why?
Thank you, Sarah, for what you said. I really loved it. The first thing that stood out to me, when the survey came out, I had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, whoa, I didn't even know like this was such a big problem. And I think, like you were saying, Sarah, that baseline is, this survey created that baseline to show, hey, we do have a problem. There is a problem with food insecurity. It is real. Like, we don't just talk about it because we want to, like it's a fun thing to talk about. We talk about it because it does exist, and it is a problem on college campuses. And so that's the first thing that stood out to me was, hey, we have this baseline now. It exists. Now you know it exists. Now what are we going to do? So the next thing that interests me is how many people knew about the pantry and how many people didn't. And like I said earlier, that's a thing we've been trying to improve, because most of the university does not know that we have a food pantry and that it exists, or we have these other resources that exist. And it's surprising because of how much media and how much work we go into promoting it, doesn't feel like it pays off. But there's other ways that we've learned how, because each university and each like different student gets information differently. And so that was something big at our university, is how can we get this to students and let them know about it. And I think that last thing is we've kind of talked about is the stigma of, there was a high percentage that, oh, I know about the pantry, but I don't like feel like someone else needs it more than I do. And that's another stigma we have that like we're trying to get over, is just because someone might be struggling more than you doesn't mean you don't need this, and doesn't mean you can't use this. And so those are kind of the things that surprised me.
And I know you've already spoken about this, but I want to see if there's anything else that you might not have had a chance to cover as well. So what did you find interesting and why?
Well, Jordan, you said that so well. You just said that really well. And I believe I share Sarah's passion too. I feel like I'm basically just an old social services caseworker charading as a college president. What Jordan said resonates with me. It put a stake in the ground and said, we're going to talk about this. And there are baseline data, as Sarah suggested, that validate the stories we hear every day, right? So that is the power of this survey. What stood out to me about it, beside what I said earlier, is that we have greater food insecurity, according to the survey, at the technical colleges than we have at the degree granting institutions. And what I love about the survey too is we look at urban versus rural, but not adjusting for that, just those two parts of our system. Technical colleges are almost 10% higher in food insecurity on the USDA scale. So that troubles me. To give some context to our audience, the technical colleges in Utah, the total student population this year is probably about 32,000 students. So, we're about the size of a Weber State or approaching a University of Utah as 8 campuses. And Davis Tech represents about 20% of those. And so to have that level of food insecurity on our campus, or in the technical colleges, but on our campus is troubling. And then, as I mentioned, I really appreciated just the analysis of the coping mechanisms. And despite the higher usage of some of those, and we all understand that no one of those is a solution. They are parts of a solution. The permanent solution is rising out of poverty. And that's the business we're all in, right? Is if we can get them over the finish line, we can get sustaining or family sustaining wages, career, put folks on career ladders or career lattices, and then we can have some permanent success. But in the meantime, we cobble together these temporary pieces, and they're just parts of that. But despite the fact that we have greater use of the food pantries for our students, greater use of SNAP, greater use of religious faith-based organization resources, our students who go hungry are identical in the percentage at both degree granting and technical colleges. That stood out to me. A higher percentage of food insecurity, and despite all these pieces that we try to cobble together, we still have the same percentage of students that are hungry at the end of the day. And that's troubling. And as Sarah says, the research, we're rich in research that tells us those students are going to struggle academically as a result.
So yeah, because for myself, like I remember looking through it and just like looking at the percentages and differences in different populations on like how they're coping, right? Like when it came to students who were using free food events to supplement their meals, and looking at that and comparing it to also the students that said that they were feeling socially isolated, and how do we go about sort of bridging those gaps? Anyway, I spent quite a bit of time looking at it. I thought it was very informative. And then our last question is tonight, before we hand it back over to Miguel to close us out. I'm going to rephrase one of the questions that we sent out to you, which is, all right, tomorrow you wake up, you're able to wave a magic wand and I sort of realize what your student services look like. And the question I have is, okay, you have the wand, what do they look like for you? And I'm going to start with Jordan.
Thank you, Alex. Right now, they look okay. I think we can always improve. Like I said earlier, I love feedback. And going kind of along that same lines, now that we have that baseline, people know that food insecurity is real. People know that colleges, like students, are in need of these services. I think that's going to help, especially at Weber State, to show, hey, let's come up with like an idea of how we can improve our services. And I think it's going back again to what I said earlier, is having everything so it's in one place, like University of Utah. having everything so students can be like, okay, it's all right here. Now what do I need? Instead of having to jump around and be like, okay, I need this, need this, need this, because that's a lot. And that's a lot to handle, especially if you're struggling and you have to go to a million different places you don't really want to, because that can make you feel like, put you even more down. So I think as we go further, we want to be able to develop something that it's all right here in one place, so students don't have to feel like, oh, this is going to make me feel bad because I have to go to all these million places, rather than I can go here and everything is here. All my resources are here. The people that I need help from are here. And so, like I said, just keep improving. I feel is what Weber State can do. So,
Darren?
Wow, magic wand. Well, interestingly, Alex, we have just reopened our student services area physically in a different part of the campus, completely redesigned. And we took a philosophy: form needs to follow function, and the function we wanted, and time will tell, but we wanted a safe environment, a safe, inviting, walk-up environment where there were, we reduced lines. Hopefully we've eliminated lines, and students could walk up and sort of get a one and done service if it was, transactional in terms of their schedule, or, paying their tuition, whatever it is. But if they needed more, then they had a safe place beyond that counter to sit down and talk with someone and get what they needed. And then educating and continuing to educate our staff and giving them the tools to meet those basic needs, either directly or through referral. And that's our hope. And I think that we've created an inviting environment. It's a whole lot better than it was before. It needed a refresh probably a generation ago, and that's what we've attempted to do. Before I conclude, though, I wanted to dial back just for a moment to the last question, and I had one other thought about one of the things that impressed me about the survey, and I meant to say this earlier, but the level of participation you got. We wouldn't be having this discussion if you hadn't put great effort into it and students felt safe answering it. And I think it's easy to take that for granted, and I wanted to highlight that before we were done.
can I actually add something to that? I think that impressed me as well, because I think that also goes along with what I was saying, is it showed that students cared about this and showed that students were food insecure, because they wouldn't have done it if they didn't feel there was a need. And so I think that goes back to, like, we're realizing now, people are realizing it is a need, and students do struggle. And so thank you, Darren, for bringing that up.
Sarah Elizabeth?
I agree completely. Yeah, the completion rate on the survey was really, it was astonishing. It was really great to see that. And I mean, you ask the social worker the miracle question, right? Like grand challenges galore in social work. And I think for me, if I had a magic wand, I would make sure that any student that's admitted into higher education, technical institute, community college, university in the nation, I mean, we'll say Utah because we're in Utah, but in the nation, like in our nation, that we could identify students and share with them resources up front before they ever have a need to talk to someone about their hunger or their housing insecurity or their mental health challenge or what they're struggling with, like up front. Because one of the things I kept hearing is how difficult it is, and we have it on our campus too, is getting the word out about the resources that are available. So I'd love to see with the magic wand, those resources in place, the campus, the community resources in place. I'd love to see that assessment up front, right when a student is admitted, we're having that conversation, we're talking about resources. The way that Kim Hall, one of my colleagues at the U, talks about it is, get to us when you smell smoke before you see the flames. And I'd like to, even before we smell smoke, like, let's talk about it. We need to move into a prevention mindset especially in our institutions of higher education. We need to be preventing these issues up front. That's my kind of magic wand. I would love to see that. Also, if I've got a magic wand, no students hungry, no students homeless. I mean, I just don't give me a magic
I'm
wand.
there
I
with you.
just a little too much power for me.
No. Well, again, thank you all. Miguel, we have anything else, any more information before we close out?
We don't. All I like to say is thank you, Alex, Sarah Elizabeth, Darren, and Jordan for joining us tonight. I think this was a great success. The discussion I heard here tonight was just incredible. This will be available on our YouTube afterwards, as well as there will be a follow-up report, an issue brief that Alex wrote for this exact topic, which we'll be getting out later this week. So again, thank you to all the panelists that joined us today. It was a great discussion, and we hope to do another one of these very soon.